Each time Henry, Sean, and I curate a reading at the Splice, we deliberately defer any definitive answer to the question, what constitutes the essence of the poetry reading? Though we rigorously interrogate this enigma in the weeks preceding each event, allowing our speculations and critiques to permeate both our creative and theoretical work, the question persists unresolved, reaching a climax until just a few minutes before the reading. If we didn't feel this welling up of socially potentialized ineffability, we wouldn't be doing this shit. That is to say, clues to a response to the question, what constitutes the essence of the poetry reading, especially now that full-blown authoritarianism is in our midst, the clues begin to stack up as the readers unfold their poetic visions in our midst. Fanny Howe called this quality bedazzlement, adding, a poetry reading is a seance where the dead and the unborn crowd the room. Emily Dickinson likened it to the top of one's head coming off. And so we're here again, availing ourselves unto the wildness of this gathering, the scariness of the moment, something that provisionally goes by the rather dull phrase, the poetry reading. And many, if not all who attend, come with a vital reserve of hope that all this here, will motivate each of us to splice into our lives the ability to feel again, to think again, and most of all, to act again. And we've got just the catalysts for that bedazzlement to pop off. Henry Goldkamp will be introducing Erika Hodges, followed by Sean Monroe, introducing Mia Kang.
Watch out. All right, given this day of no kings protests, gay pride parades, in spite of the political vitriol facing the LGBTQ communities nationwide and others suffering at the margins, and yet another hot and wet one bearing down on anybody walking down the street, I can't help but swap an aesthetic consideration of the poet Erika Hodges for, I guess, like a moralistic one of the current second, right now, that we find ourselves in. In their poem, The Floodlands Are a Lonely Commune, we are gifted a litany of the speaker's proletariat friends. A nanny cooking chicken, a sex worker falling in love with her John, another dying from overdose, yet another hoarding junk found along the street, and finally, quote, another one tells me the revolution hasn't even started yet. To be sure, this is a bit of an older poem, considering that last line, because given the hell we find ourselves in, and not anymore scrolling half a world away, but instead seeing the now of other human beings shredding our neighbors' respectable lives apart, painfully proves the refrain of this one-act Brecht play that I thought of reading that goes, the compare, it features clowns, goes, does man help man? 9, the audience, surely comprised of the likened, tired and poor and hungry, of whatever biblical proportions floats your boat, shouts back. I'm really not trying to paint another messy, messianic picture here when I tell you, if you don't know already, a bit of Hodges' background. A self-proclaimed nuisance to Tulane University's law program, which they've just recently completed. Of course, in that good trouble kind of way. I get the impression the powers that be there in that institution could not stand them. To frame this a bit more, I'll pilfer a parenthetical completely out of context from Marxist critic Frederick Jameson. Although one should remember that genuinely radical or leftist elements were very scarce in the German university system of the 1920s. And we see where that gets us. Center stage in the deadly maelstrom of a misnomer. For if we go to the denotation of the words, rather than the detonations of them, in fact, the political leanings of our splicely comrades that most of us share here today, probably all of us, are in fact the conservative ones, desiring basic needs met for all the living beings all the time. Thumb through any social media feed, and you know who the real radicals are, honking and goose-stepping in line. When I asked Erika to share some poems to help me ping off to write this introduction, they sent this week of course, but I'll also be using Splice to showcase more of the new things brimming for next week. We have an artist tonight who's defending those whose maniacal systems attempt to render the marginalized defenseless. And I have no doubts that this new work we'll hear tonight will take on the tornado we find ourselves in, that truly, I just will go for it, has love at the heart of the poem. A poetics that deep down wants a reversal of Brecht's painful refrain, 9, that we might in fact be capable to shift the tides and help humanity on a massive scale. I'm reminded of Rilke's early work from a sequence called The Voices, in which he takes on several personae, from a suicide to a beggar to a prisoner. The song of the leper begins, "Look at me, someone forsaken by all." The leper goes on to, quote, beat his clapper, as it was a common practice to have a noise-making device to warn townsfolk as they wandered. Devastatingly, the leper says, "So far as the sound of my clapper can reach, I am at home," which is to say, a sonic force shield of loneliness for a condition, mind you, which is curable. Alone is what the tyrants want us to feel, but we all know there's more of us than there is of them. So how's this instead? Let's each of us knock our clappers into song and give a huge round of applause for Erika Hodges, everyone, and make us feel at home.
Thanks, Henry. It makes me incredibly shy, but I'm going to read poems anyway. So what I have tonight is going to be in 3 acts, sort of. The first poem I'm going to read is from that older manuscript I sent Henry. I wrote it in June of 2020. And I was trying to figure out what old thing I wanted to bring back to open this reading, and I read this poem and I saw the resonances from the last couple of weeks that we've all experienced. So I'm going to open with that. Spring, a cadence of seasons like music. The 3rd spring was poppies and riots. I was without you, and I tried to write a sentence long enough to get there, to slip like a ribbon underneath your door, tie itself on your bedpost so you saw I called when you woke up. The 3rd spring was thunder and exceptionalists. A chasm had opened in the earth, and there was nothing I could do to fix it, and so I became preoccupied with the little dents, trying to push them out with my reason, with my sour kindness, which I thought was good culture. The 3rd spring was overheated patios and mass incarceration, gingham and distraction, a yellow fly swatter and the cops, dinner time and riot gear for the cops. Police and more police, the dead and our grief. A dream and an awakening, a sleep and a deeper sleep, a tired explanation and a hungry frustration, paralysis, and an encounter with guilt, the ones that were already here, waiting for us while we come up fully rested, acting like it's new. There are no nations, only reenacted childhoods. We lament and argue and dye our hair and disagree on tactics and still love each other in the morning, wanting the other to be alive, to stay alive, to have a pink convertible, to rub glitter in our rolls, to fall on the floor laughing from our fresh and genderless cunts, deep joy from our pelvic ground, this Eastertide abundance, a new insurgence. That pillar of fear, of biblical salt that holds our back straight is melting in this triad of seasonal duplication. We sweat and we imagine our rubbing thighs are one another's past summers in this endless spring. And then the next few I'm going to read are from a manuscript I wrote a while ago, but I'm bringing back out because I think there's some really good things. I think I just hit on something that I need to keep working at. I wrote it I was raised in a religious cult. I was raised in Scientology, which is like really interesting to people when I tell them that. I think about cults specifically with language and how language is used as this way of separating the people in the cult from the outside world, and so that they can only understand each other and they can't understand anyone else, and other people can't understand them. So I started really just like fucking with language really hard in these poems, and I'm bringing them back. I want to give them more life, so I'm gonna read them here. The headspace of a metronome. Got called in by Grand Master Locution. They all carry a dog whistle in their left pocket or around their neck if they wake up ready for dedication. Pink shirts mean executive. Executives are also the ones that look you in the eye during execution, if it were to come to that. Grand Master secret valves wear leakage yellow. Their shadows carry brooms, the wide bristled ones. They don't have shirts. In the corners are decommissioned battleships. You cannot board them, but you can see pictures of when they were boarded. I have never been to the top floor, where I have heard there are all sorts of medical offices for the ones that get shirts, a dentist's office made entirely of old phone books, no laughing gas, because if you can remember it, then it didn't really happen. Mess is at 6:30. You don't have enough time to eat. You stand in line for the expirational foie gras gullet juicing stations, but it might be faster to order ravioli. Pushing your spine back to compressed intention is very popular. On the third floor, windows are pinned to your sleeve. The ninth hall is the best place to kneel so that the no cortexes can start the process of sorting hope into mail bins to be sent out for inspection. There are rooms that are not pictured there. There are maps only in a warehouse with fireproof walls, a cackling plumbing. Transport trucks only move at night. Not pictured is the wailing spleen that makes a mess between the 5th and 6th floors. It is wise to keep the soft bits hinged, hanging the back of your jaw protected. It is in good taste. It is safer. Gathered from whittled pear. Based on previous occupations and the priesting of shoulder shrugs, I was assigned the condition that is the third lowest in a platitude of 12. A pale orange with pearlescent buttons and heavy collar. The condition of rectified backstretch is the one that is always there. A compass may never point southeasterly except in moments of soft aggression. In this condition, the watcher and the watched are in relationship of constant axiom. There is truth in your sidestep, unburrowing by means of not turning around. There were pamphlets laid out. I took one. I kept it. In order to move out of this condition, one must not. An ethical reality snipped and teased by many renditions of a gleaming staircase. It would be seen from the nods of pink children that to be in this condition would indicate enemy and watcher as both friend and a place to go. Rectified backstretch is a crowded back closet and folder as thick as fleshing slab of boar that hangs above your bed. Before you go to sleep, you must massage this boar with the hanging bits of jowls or crevice of pimpled knee fat, whatever you might possess. Pus is the watcher. For the first 3 months, all the chairs were coated in rubber, and every day we were asked to relay any act you may have committed in this time or the last where you felt as though you were the robber in any given situation, sat down at the kitchen table to eat a single piece of toast, and then stopped because there were no tiles to remember what for. That is when the watcher was invited into the order. This may also be called uncontrollable peakishness. Only those who can make ground with this hunch may find their way out of the aforementioned closet. Cameras perched on ghosts, cats with slow tilting truths told through metal cans hooked up to a pleasure factory. To feel freedom and power in never asking the watcher, but being happy to spill, happy to only smile with the lips. Eyes are the basic cause of stupidity. A knock at the door. The electrical outlets in every apartment you move into will fall out of the wall and onto the floor. For the next 5 days, you must exchange places with them in order to conduct the frequency of backflip decrepitude. No sutures for a candle maker. Become a rafter, a raft, or a suffix. Cling to the side so no one can see you give up. Return to the state of fraught-making. Look up. The big book. Sometimes it is red, sometimes it is an 8-point font. Machinate the sunset through curtains obtained from the Holiday Inn fire sale. Go down the long hallway. The long hallway. Sit in the room with the loop video of hurrah, acronym for cognitive birdland. Jostle the plastic tubing, fermenting green. Repair the reaped and return. Training routine. Do birds fly? Here is a day, and I wake thinking I've got it. Sure, axiom, fundamental honesty. I can walk now. I can avoid the green light, hued like sickness, like meek violence, left clutching my belly in the back. Storeroom in the air is thick with drugstore rubbing alcohol. You are in present time. They say there is a back order, but I have not finished wiping the expiration date off the small white bottles all lined up with that certain wiffle plastic like medicine, but expired and flimsy. Do fish swim? It is being lost again. There is one window in this place. I have learned that if you lie and say it was you, it will be faster, something they will find you for no matter, and I really thought I had it. Stand up and give them a hand. Really, be enthusiastic now, and what does it mean? Use it in a sentence. Do birds fly? Do fish swim? Again, fail, good. Again, good. Do fish fly? Do birds swim? 8. 8008. If you have that pendant, you can come to brunch. I really thought I had it. I'm not making it up. I don't know what the needle says, but I really swear I'm not making it up. It happened. No, I can't sign it. Something feels not right. Can you feel that? Do fish swim? Tell me about a time. Tell me about a time when you felt ashamed. Tell me about a time when you hurt someone. Tell me about a time you felt happy. Tell me about a time you said something you shouldn't have. Tell me at a time you were embarrassed. Good, thank you. What did it smell like? What color was it? Use it in a sentence. Thank you, continue, thank you, again, good. You were in present time. Good, 8, 3, 2, 1, good. Thank you. You were in present time. Okay, so the last few poems I wrote so that I didn't have to study for the bar exam, which I'm now doing in the exact center of 5 weeks out, 5 weeks done. It's horrible. Don't ever do it. And so in conjunction with the bar exam, some shit's gone down in my life. And so I wrote this book that Henry was talking about, that I read a poem from that was about like the politic. And I wrote this when I was a younger poet, and a lot of my teachers and a lot of my mentors and a lot of my friends gave me really good feedback, and I realized that I don't know how I feel about political poetry, which is a funny thing for me to say, but it just doesn't feel like it does enough. It feels a little bit indulgent. And so I think I need to get more specific, like really, really minute to me and to what happens in the really tiny moments. And so this is my new attempt at whatever the thing is that I write. So these poems are coming from that sort of trying place. I don't write poems much anymore. I used to write mostly about being loved, or loving in such a way that I did not need to be loved, or the psychic grief we all project onto rooms with one brick wall. But now we plan dinner a couple days in advance, so we have time to get to the store. Now I make you laugh by turning life sounds into a silly turn while we sort the mail. I write less poems now. The urgency of the line now lives in the dailiness of my hands repeating rote tasks as I calculate good time. I sit in the cold rooms and plastic chairs making small talk with badges because they can make it easier, and I'm still not used to how loud jails are. I used to write poems about the femme politic, the everyday labor of poverty, And now I browse the docket for my name. I try to encourage the scar tissue from where I had MRSA to emerge. I memorize the forms of conventional obligation. Vow is not one of them, but pledge is. I have written the word death 46 times studying for the bar exam. I have written the word service 29 times. Reconciliation 4, trust 35. I have no new takes, no fresh, scathing commentary, no call that hasn't already been bellowed from every ledge, and no poems. I have not written your name or the names of the dead or the personhood of severed limbs. I have not lived outside of my computer except shortly to see beloveds marry in a club I did drugs once in a previous version. I have not re-upped my donations or posted or been a witness other than what is unavoidable, which is much of it. I have written elements and factors and analysis, and I am conversational in the language of the state, but no poems. To be allowed in, I must take this mythology so literally, must pass a series of tests of inhuman feats of calculation, of retention, of depersonalization, to then be a wall ball court. The facts, the black letter bouncing off of you. Your role is not to duck, but to be a thwack of satisfaction. That is bad news for a poet. I am tired, and I do pray that it can just be a little more, livable, but I haven't written a poem in some time. The neighborhood. My mother lives in a gated trailer park. My sister will qualify that saying it's a nice trailer park, but I don't know a person north of the Carolinas that could tell the difference. Last month, I got swindled into chipping in for flowers. Mother's Day is not something I keep track of. I kept my mouth shut and half-mooned out the window the way my dad used to do, while my brother and sister tried to fit "I'm good, tell me I'm good" into a little card. While the residents hired some retired something to stand at the makeshift guardhouse, a shed they all chipped in for, with a gun to keep him out, which is funny as hell to meet, a gated trailer park. How she even found such an accommodation. People really do find each other. A termite to a lamp working late. Can't hold a job, can't cite her sources, can't say she's sorry, and yet somehow God gave her the truth, made her born with the natural ability to live in fear, alone, amongst the blue light. Well, that's fine, I guess it's not. It's a scourge. We just keep sending dead things that seem nice, hoping she'll follow suit. You ever write a poem about your mom turning despicable? It's an ulcer right through the page, but a gated trailer park that gets me every time. No, I will not testify. The night heron swooping, the hollow core of flight moons a neighbor here. A cypress knee knocking sows the yellow retirement home. I get asked to dance every time I pass. The swarms come later. It's June here after all. The porosity of sticking out the summer, of compacted sand playing as rock. I've got slide decks, whole tomes about sitting with you in the dark, hiding from bugs. Been poking my head out slowly, following the nest of cables hanging heavy. I haven't yet returned to the block I very nearly got shot. A pistol in my belly, but we felt so sorry for each other for a second. Bass drops into the abyss, a distorted version of Care and a stick-up. Sirens announce the morning, the supremacy of things that will eat you after you die. West Feliciana, for Jesse Hoffman. This has not been a year without death. It is so rarely the right time to write a poem amongst ladder climbers, scavenging grief eaters, mediocre supremacy guzzlers, award recipients slumming it. What are you supposed to say about your day when you know about death row? What's the line supposed to do for triple lifers, for the nitrogen gas coming, descending, a solid state accumulation? Death by suffocation is coming, y'all. It's here in this zip code. It's an ungelled spotlight, but poems are not the extent of what we can do to get free. I've got so many multi-lettered degrees, and I still don't know what kind of language will do for mothers that raise their children by one phone call a day. A stanza becomes a parody at a certain point. Daryl in the corner knows my name. Sweeps the walk twice a day, knows my family's from New York, and mid-morning, the rascals buzz through, avoiding the big crack on the right to gather on his swept steps. Zoe keeps spraying plants for her dog table scraps. Finally, grabbing my phone last week to put her number in, we really got to get together. Oscar's grandchildren are visiting again, and Sonia and John wait out the bar repair so as to get back to slinging drinks. You know, I do meditate, she says, stashing her defensive scissors. It is a rotted sickness I am trying to dig out with a pitted spoon to think I wake up alone. A generational ailment packaged as white liberty. What kind of art is supposed to be found here? Every poem must be a work poem, an actionable slant rhyme to put you on notice, but what kind of pretty tongue is built for that? Every year the state has reigned has been a year of execution, and the guards cry too when it happens. Double exposure. A nurse described the suicide of her best friend while she scraped cancer off of my right breast after photographing it in full light with an iPad, while pulling my men's button-up back to expose my cleavage, while she told me how her friend went to law school too, and they graduated the same year, and her husband and child drowned on vacation, the stench of singed skin from the cauterization wand drifting up towards the light, and she just couldn't recover even though she still had 2 living kids. She was underwater. And living without air didn't seem workable, and they don't give results over the phone. So I'll have to come back in 2 weeks to see if it's all gone or if they have to be more invasive. All my friends scattered, for Joshua Clover, regarding his poem, specifically Galactic. Senior year of college, me and Jack and Em blocked up and tagged every business on Canyon Boulevard, riot, strike, riot, cutting holes in the black band tees we had wrapped around the bottom of our faces so we could smoke cigarettes and whoop sideways into the blue tigress, flat-ironed face of the headquarters, so violently young. Is this not paradise? Waxing and waning the gleam of the books we did not know could exist in Orlando or Kankakee, pouring out of us Duluth and Cristeva, clunking against our thighs. Cops are fucking losers. Slapped on the bench in the pocket park of Goss Grove, reveling, I can look at this with spacious sweetness because of you, Joshua. Because you had room for commies becoming. Let us be wholly embarrassing. Encouraged it. Knew we might one day become useful. Edible weeds, and even now I can look at kids fucked and their hearts screeching new and bloody anger winding up towards untamed love, and I know that they are paradise. Forgetting about it before we even let each other down, we make space for joy we want right now. You'll want to pay money to be as well as you are now someday. We will never be. We'll double down. How is this not paradise? Okay, this is my last poem. The Sweats. After the rain, as the heat lays down her folded body, reclining over us, exhausted. The water pooling in the cracks of the sidewalk, sealed but still susceptible to roots, starts to evaporate, and it meets the height of my hips with my bottomless burden of rage. Mixing a sweating tonic, coating my fingers if I let my arms hang, so that later as I'm chopping dinner and I wipe my cheek with the back of my palm, I get a little on my lip. Tuning to an emergency signal, repeating the same message over forever, if anyone can hear. Of course you are my enemy if your veins expand to see families hiding in their neighbors' homes in fear of state kidnapping. Of course you are my enemy if your ability to see beyond yourself is as thin as those prison windows you also put in schools. Of course you are my enemy if you'd still like to mix and mingle, say hi in the halls, to have polite conversation, choke the air out of all things with potential to be lovely, to have our budgets branded on the back of our neck. Yeah. You're the enemy. And then I set my hand down. Back down on the knife. What a thing to have sitting on your skin. I can be barely blanching the snow peas so the pasta retains a crunch. Watching my beloveds eat. Putting extra cheese in their bowls. Skimming the pool for leaves. Avoiding their school of feet, a rock garden decorated with people loving each other. And there is still that frequency available. Immediately. A choice to be among the pleasure. It is true that when I say I love you, I also say I love myself. But even more, when you say you love me, when you let me feed you snap peas, I stay here, forcing the rage to bend, to be flexible, to be deeper with a more interesting personality. Asparagus, linguine, lemons, parsley, chicken thigh, onions, carrots, olives, cilantro, couscous. Come over. I got you.
Keep it going for Erika. We'll continue this incredible afternoon of poetry with Mia Kang. Mia Kang is the author of All Empires Must from Airlie Press 2025, which won the 2023 Airlie Prize, and the chapbooks Apparent Signs from Ghost City Press 2024 and City Poems Ignition Press 2020. She is best known, or barely known, as the self-appointed Poet Laureate of The Process, in which capacity she has appeared as a guest on the Rights to Ricky Sanchez podcast. Whatever prizes she has won, she has paid for threefold in submission fees, something we could probably all identify with out here. Mia Kang's poetics, crystallized in her book All Empires Must, emerge at the nexus of mythic reimagining, formal precision, and bodily resistance. Across the collection, Kang engages persona poems, figures like Rhea Silvia or the Vestal Virgins, subverting classical narratives to interrogate empire, gender, and language. The insistence on the body as both archive and site of violation recurs with brutal insistence, anchoring her work in material experience even as it reaches across time and myth. This deep engagement with myth and materiality aligns Kang's poetics with a broader contemporary landscape, one invested in excavation, disruption, and emergence. In a 2003 manifesto, Theses Towards the Politicization of Art, Alexander Skidon writes that poetry, by means of caesura, defamiliarization, self-reflection, fragmentariness, and the decomposition of narrative, allows one to discover the asemantic gaps, the folds in the meaning that have not yet been colonized by ideology. This is an art that inserts spectators and readers into the process of co-authorship, of becoming, and in this way leads them to an understanding of their ties with the bodies and consciousnesses of others. Kang's lines enact this insertion, making readers complicit in the destabilization of inherited stories. Her lyric fractures, syntactic slips, and historical reassemblages invite an active, unsettled reading experience, one that resists totalizing explanation in favor of ambiguity, contradiction, and multiplicity. Elsewhere, the poet and theorist Carla Harriman, in her essay Toy Boats, contends, "I prefer to distribute narrative rather than deny it," emphasizing narrative not as a closed story, but as a field of tension and presence. Kang's poems similarly distribute rather than resolve. Each becomes a charged node within a network of violence and resistance, past and present. Rather than rejecting narrative outright, a tendency sometimes seen in earlier postmodern poetics, Kang retools the narrative as a flexible container for ideological critique, affective complexity, and speculative recovery. In this way, Kang's work both draws from and extends postmodern strategies. Her poems inhabit fragmentation, polyvocality, and pastiche, but push these tools towards historical accountability and feminist revision. Where postmodern poetry often emphasizes the impossibility of stable meaning, Kang turns that instability into an ethical imperative to question the foundations of empire, myth, and patriarchy, to, quote, plagiarize the past apocrypha, unquote, as Monica de la Torre writes, and rewrite it otherwise. If postmodernism destabilized the authority of grand narratives, Kang takes the next step, offering counter-narratives that expose how language and form participate in systems of power. Her poetry suggests that rupture is not only aesthetic, but also political. a means of reclaiming agency within and against the archive. Kang's project is not only to imagine alternate scripts of empire, but to embolden readers to inhabit their own lines of rupture. Please welcome to the Splice stage, Mia Kang.
Wow, thank you so much, Sean. I've never been to a series where there's like such an intensive introduction given, and it's really crazy and beautiful, and now I have to actually read these poems, so I hope they do those things. But hi everyone, my name's Mia Kang, and it's really so nice to be back here in New Orleans. I was here for Poetry Fest and just had such a great time, and hit these guys up and was like, I might come through in June. Is there a reading I could jump on? So I'm so happy to participate. I'm going to read a little bit from the book, All Empires Must, which came out in April from Airlie Press, and then I'm going to read some other stuff, which I'll talk about when I get to that. I was at the fundraiser for Protean magazine in New York City the other night to hear some poets read, and I was with my friend, and we ran into a friend of hers, and the friend of hers asked me, like, oh, what is your book about? And I realized that I do not have an elevator pitch for this book at all. And I said something like it, rereads Roman mythology through like art and architecture and something, and she was like, but it's also about a relationship. And then she asked me later, is that something that you're trying to conceal or that you don't want to talk about? So I guess what I'll say tonight about what the book is about is it kind of reworks the myth of the founding of Rome through the lens of Rhea Silvia, who was the mythical mother of Romulus and Remus. She was someone who was forced to become a Vestal Virgin to prevent basically royal heirs from being born to her. And she bore children by Mars. In some versions of the story, that's a love affair. In some versions, it's a rape. And so that's the myth that the book kind of works through. And this contemporary relationship, which was an abuse of power, is sort of just out of frame. So I'll start with in media red. I stand at the mirror, applying Rome. Rome never the Rome I want. Rome enough, Rome of the thing itself. My life raised to its exponent, reddening in the wind chill, Rome under the pale. I want to call Rome out, to reflect the light at such and such a wavelength, like Rome, want the length of wanting, without losing, wishing for Rome avant the coming guard, warmth leaving under a blue light. The page reddens me with knowledge, but still I apply myself thus, making Rome again the wound so easily pressed. Should have written page numbers. Just wrote the titles. Kiwitas. Acts of love have material effects. For a woman tending the sacred fire, these include the risk of becoming an extinguisher of flames essential to civic life. It is a burden to put out what others hold as central to faith and coherence. Acts of faith have material effects. A Vestal virgin touched by encounter must be buried alive, a beautiful metaphor for shame itself, which squirms even under all that dirt. Thus, the dead learn too late that devotion should be unidirectional, a straight line from here to suffocation. Love must not bleed at the edges, must not meet others in the banal spaces of civic life. It is a burden to personify. If Vesta's hearth is the site of the sacred, its material effects are destruction, burning, consumption, constant hunger to end wood. Acts of destruction have phantasmatic effects. For a body surviving encounter, these include civic life, shame, the risk of being a proxy, tender of the hearth, belonging to the public by way of the goddess who embodies a dream of faith and coherence. Material effects extinguish themselves eventually, as when a woman touched in the correct way undoes the burden of love and puts out taking the goddamn city in and under. Didactic of a triumphal arch featuring the goddess Roma. An arch is a falling that doesn't fall. Some bodies lose their lives, others look up and up. To make a body call out, give it something to adore. To make a city call out, raise every body's voice up and up and up. Spread the song, force from the keystone. To make a body call out, let a wall fall on it, push, crush, collapse. To make a city call out, give it a name, give it a helmet, give a shield. So I bought a little city. Rome made a deal with the surrounding areas. Let's be friends, said Rome. What is friends, said the world. An engineering feat, said the city. Bridge here, road there. Listen, we've got concrete, a subtle command of long, i.e., strategies of substitution within syntagmatic strata. Lose your conjunctions, gain the virility of proper nouns. An encounter, if you will, of synonyms in which the plot points lead us from your eye, mother in the garden, books on the shelves, to mine, your spoons and fields and daughters suddenly singing with force, Rome, 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 Rome. Elegiac archaeology. I cannot need what I cannot refuse. I have lost my composure toward Rome, name I had to see if I could bear, place to which I fell and would not rise. The last one I'll read from the book is called Livy Theorizes the Social, perhaps appropriate for the No King's Day, and it has an epigraph from Livy. Romulus made his attack. He ordered his men to come by different routes to the king's palace at an appointed time. Remus collected another group and came to their assistance from Numitor's house, and so he killed the king. Livy, The History of Rome, Book 1. And so he killed the king, where king means blood relation, and he could mean any twin who fits the bill. Livy enacts the instability of subject as pronoun and as in relation to the king. Blood of blood, and so foreshadows fratricide. And so he killed the king, where so means to end, and king means brother of my mother's father, and kill is what it always is. And so tells us something about the structure of death. First description, then the main event. And so he killed the king, and so he killed the king. From all sides, a net of guile, but no one hero is here apparent. He means merely soon to be without another. And so the king is killed endlessly at every hand. It was me climbing in to Rome to read for reasons men go missing, mediate who inhabits the sentence. The grammar runs cold. Livy quiets the singular person, and so finds us out. All right, so I have a few other things. It's kind of an assortment tonight. So the next three are from another manuscript that is finished but not published, called Perish Abolish, in which half the poems are, the titles are words starting with the prefix para, and half the poems are starting with the prefix ab, and it's a manuscript about the question of solidarity, basically. Abracadabra for Eric and Patricia. List of things to banish. Can include words, people, theoretical apparatuses. Can take the form of a grocery list, a scientific experiment, or a manifesto. can read like a personal ad of unwanting, can summon aid to help with banishing, can be uncertain of what will remain, can have no positive mission statement, can be written in a language other than language, can circulate amongst friends only, can evade being imagined, written, embodied, archived, can go like this, can make itself irrelevant, can include buildings, brushstrokes, and other abominations, can mean my way of life is unlivable, can mean my life is as yet unlived, can mean I must become a menace to my enemies, can undo futurity forever in favor of, can remake futurity into someone who doesn't recognize herself, can punctuate the present like a cup of coffee or a Monday, can be dreamed up and shot down and elongated, can tell us something, can include forms and fantasies, even the ones getting us by, can instigate an interregnum, can be unfinished, can include hope, hopefully, can be blank, but don't kid yourself, it isn't, and it can't include history. Castigo de Dios, Hudson, New York. Shouting in Spanish, the workers toss plastic, paper, pulleys out onto the grass. A trio of bay windows frame the descent. Michael called me, feeling his mortality. "Don't worry about me," he said. "Make David famous." I refused. In David's paintings, all the men have wings or tails. His weakness is words. They appear where they shouldn't. Writing history, I tried to explain. Your work, the workers, what I mean is money. David leaves a voicemail. I always think of you with purple orchids in your hair. A museum asked permission to print an image, then never paid him. We adjust the viewfinder. I had a bad relationship. My lover floated down, crushing me. There's no saving grace. That's not a good investment. Thank God he will die anonymous. They both will. This is a kind of sequel to Abracadabra. Midwinter Day, 2023. We want the keys to the coffers, but would you settle for a monument? Would you settle for a praise song, for uninterrupted day, for the knowledge of having tried, for procedure, for the right people being in the room, for precious rest? Would you settle for a cemetery? Would you settle for seduction by repetition, for rhythm, for naming names, for honoring the ancestors? Would you settle for a narrative arc, for a box that closed all the way and had no leaking seams? Would you settle for a sent message, for the potential that was activated, for what we learned along the way? Would you settle for a single family detached? Would you settle for a double garage, for dirty lenses, for the hope of the new generation? Would you settle for generativity? Would you settle for one more pour? Would you settle for stopping, for sobriety, for cold wind and sun, for the friend in your pocket? Would you settle the very future with your incessant being, your regrettable troubles, your hindsight, your hand on the door to the end of the world? Would you settle for the world, for its spending, for penance? The next few are a little series. I'm gonna read the whole of this little mini digital chapbook that I had come out from Ghost City Press last summer. It's a really cool project that they do every summer. They release a bunch of digital mini chaps all throughout the summer, and you can just download them free on their website. That was cool for this particular series of poems because it was like, I was taking all these pictures of strange signs around Philadelphia, like stop signs that had other signs pasted on them, or just like, you know, funny stuff on the street. And I started pairing the photos and the poems. So all of these have a photo attached to them, but I won't try to describe them, I'll just read the poems. So the manuscript is called Apparent Signs, and it has an epigraph from Doc Rivers. The best ability is availability. Hate the player. On walls and on signs, other signs. Where I loved the frame, I loved the frame. A loving thought of replication, greedily extrapolating. What if Allen Iverson were really in there, spitting out zeros and ones, using the screen? The markup always visible in the margins. Commuting is a crapshoot. Every stop's an island of instruction. Beloved court, tell me where's the game when parameters change. Just kidding, I'd never trade you for another. Scrape a sticker off a surface just to stick it somewhere else. NBA draft season, so. Frankly, I do this, I do that, but differently. Shapely hedges, incomplete melt. There's concrete poetry, and then there's the other kind, little grids getting frisky. So many seasons to rewatch. I could put the code to the alarm in this poem. You could get in with two options. Take everything or stay forever. Subscription. No response. When this happens, they say the device is bricked. Who knows what went on between then and now? It was going so well. The proposals, the renewals. I went west to get a spare, almost thinking I'd lost my key. The new job is no joke. I can't keep my property about me. I mean my wits, scaling the chain link, stepping down for the trolley doors to open. Can you explain this error in the kerning, this obvious difference in emphasis? I almost lost my ability to no avail. My Winnipeg. This is for Cam Scott. There's the unspeakable, then there's the unspeakable speakable. We each lived in the cradle of two rivers. Manhattan moves with us, you see. There was no letter not to you, no aim in wandering, nowhere to stop and think. What can I do? It's every surface for itself, every mouth a mouth. I'd seal the case, I can't believe I'd read correctly. It's just that when you're there, I'm here. Self-portrait in a bad market. I will tell you what this photo was from. So there was this storefront in Philly, in Center City, that was empty for a long time, and I think during the pandemic, it was supposed to become an outpost of the Juice Press, which is like this big juice chain in New York City that I worked at the first location of back when juice was really cool. And it had, paper over the glass door onto the street, and it said like Juice Press coming soon. And I'd been walking by it for months and months, and then finally, the next time I walked by it, had the paper up and it had a printed out sign, just like typewritten paper that said, vacant, nothing of value inside. So I took this really great self-portrait of me reflected in that, and that's what this poem is paired with, self-portrait in a bad market. So we leave the site. The construction era has ended. Now we simply superimpose. The figure has no grounds. Prairie is as much ocean. Who's taller? Who shoots off the catch? Encrypt as in final resting place, as in home. But I don't sleep, you know that. Worried about the give and the get. Every transaction ends with rose petals and regret. All right, and then the last little series that I'll read from, since I moved to Philadelphia, I've become kind of a ridiculous sports fan. And because if you don't, they'll kick you out. And I listened to this podcast about the 76ers, who are like a pretty doomed team who have been doing this thing called the process for many years, where they're trying to like slowly do all these different steps to ultimately win a championship. But now we're pretty close to the point. A lot of people would say we're already past the point where we know that the process has failed, and it's been going on for like a long time, like over a decade. So I listened to this podcast and I follow the team closely. And I started sending them, they'll read listener emails on the podcast, and I started sending them poems when I would write a basketball poem, because I would like, there's no way they're gonna do this. And they actually have read a few of them. And I recently did a live event with them for the NBA draft lottery. We kept our pick. And so this next set of poems is like shit that I've written, which now is becoming a manuscript, which is about like, basically like a very overdetermined metaphor between the process and my failed engagement. First poem is called Breach of Promise. The problem with the process is that everything is everything. Your old lover holds another's hand now. Whose jersey will you never throw away? From the backcourt, it's all horizon. One who's never won before might yet. After a while, what's a rebound anyway? As long as play continues, we can call each year a year. Rookies become rock stars, or don't. I still think the ring that almost broke me was my shot. There was always a ball, but barely a basket. Okay, James Harden was on our team for a little while. He was really annoying, and he started kind of like throwing a fit at the end of his time with us, and he did a bunch of really ridiculous things, like calling our general manager a liar and being really dramatic, and it was embarrassing. So I had this theory that he was going through the 5 stages of, however many there are, 7 stages of grief, 9 stages of grief, infinite stages of grief, about the fact that like the top point of his career is kind of over. And I wrote this poem, Sit Down with James Harden. Honey, I fell on the sword to feel holy once too. It was a kind of kindness, first the point and then the flesh. Agape, a bee swarm storms the cave, a wind no one can weather. Grief is the friend tapping one shoulder from behind another. Think of it this way. The poem is always about you, the one who couldn't stay. We did get rid of him. Trust the process, which is our tagline. Joel Embiid recovers. He's injured all the time. It would be like thumbing a wound, so I do it. The great thing about pain is proof of life. Any calculation might pay off. I had too much pride, which was love I couldn't give up. No one told me to sit down. They told me I had a choice, to wait and see or to go for it. I've been here before. Repair could be, in fact, unending. So before coming to New Orleans for the Poetry Fest, it had been 3 years since I was here, and the previous time I was here, I was with my ex-fiance, and we were in a car accident, and it was right before I broke up. I wrote this poem this year when Joel Embiid was injured again, and he was shut down for the season, and I knew I was about to come back to New Orleans for the first time. Shutting down. I can hear New Orleans, specific sound twice inflected. Once the empty openness of bird calls over water. We were in the woods adjacent to the wide river. I cooked and prepared to prove a point. When the time came, you were my call as I broke down in the hallway, my examiners waiting. Meanwhile, in the mornings, you stood on the levee with your camera, tracking length and horizon. Years later, thrum of the intersection. I sat on the curb with my books and broken glasses until the tow truck finally arrived. We walked to a blurry dinner, passing the signal, turned away by the storm, a correct indicator made suddenly false. I haven't been back since. Even though weeks passed between one event and the next, I don't know that I ever left the crushed car. What if a horn had sounded, a different miracle had entered the ring? When the player shuts down for the season, this time could be the one that is endless. Okay, I'll read 2 more. This one is called Terrible. Only thing left to love is Philadelphia. Only thing left to save is Philadelphia. I helped all my lovers fall back in love with their city, their art, their husbands and wives. I helped all my landlords wipe their asses. I municipally bonded, tax-free. I flowed with the pitches and the bad calls, stalled in the buses and cut through the parking lots. I wrote report after report, gathered my specialized knowledges, gave the case interview my best shot. You can trust me, I said. I want nothing, I said. My hands itched in the overgrowing lots where I counted intangibles. I loved any person who understood the terrible price. Their eyes registered the overlay. All right, and this last one is called Eternal Return. It's for Mike Moore, who's hiding in the back. And so when I was here in April for the Poetry Fest, I talked to a guy on the bus because he was wearing a Super Bowl hat with an Eagles logo. And now I'm here visiting him, so this is Eternal Return. And there are 2 epigraphs. One is a tweet from Sixers Adam, who's a very important Sixers reporter. Jared McCain says he's now jumping with no pain. Plan for the summer is just to get healthy so he can get back to work. Says he can't wait to be able to just run up and down the court. Jared McCain was a rookie we took this past year who was having like an incredible start to the season and then got injured. And then in the press conference about this, where McCain is telling people like, oh, I'm getting better, I can like start to run again soon, He used the phrase amor fati, which I just thought was really funny for an NBA player to bring up this idea. So the second epigraph is from Nietzsche, amor fati, to not merely bear what is necessary, still less conceal it, but love it. Eternal return. The terrible way an undoing can't be undone. Seeking a silver bullet, I closed my eyes and slept through 3 whole years. The only thing I could see was the game. Pure suspension past the basket, shot thrown with precision one could mistake for faith. Amor fati, the rookie says, life opens onto something. I had mourned so much before it ended, that April I was weightless. I watched Tyrese in flight and my life opened onto itself where it had frozen in place. I watched Joelle play with an injured finger and it hurt me more than her absence. Knowledge is so much worse than life's occurrences, that one can bear all kinds of things and still not finally be destroyed. Last week, I put another ghost to bed, visiting the city where we were maybe most in love, where I first began to plan the proposal. Life opens onto something, an idea you'd give your life for. That's the beauty of the team, the fight song, the little insignia. I kept the ring in a box for over a year, then I split it in 2. Now I wear one or the other on separate chains, the emerald still in its setting, the band flattened into a thin disc. What would be the point of pretending I'm not encircled, alive in another life I couldn't get to? Nietzsche suggests it's all the same. One might start to feel, even, cursed when sudden joy curdles on sight. Another meniscus tear. To have known that time when we wove horizon above our heads, to have seen the 16th pick rise fast and focused only to learn the meaning of being benched. The court has a way of changing its face, making a mirror of its means and ends. This April, I watch nothing. Sixers are not in playoffs. In New Orleans again, I ride the number 8 to Chalmette. Life opens onto something, a spin of days, a single kiss. McCain says he's jumping with no pain, can't wait to be able to just run up and down the court. My God, I think, it's all the same. I lift off a little, a futile test. We wait to learn which future makes the pass. Only ever a moral victory. I'm the fucking rookie of every year. Thank you.
All right, keep it going for the poets tonight. And listen, the Pelicans are cursed, so there's you really had the right audience for this, I think.
Oh, I have books for sale, by the way.
Oh yeah, no, I was gonna get to that, and I'll get to that right now. Books for sale, tip your bartender. This was really an incredible, intimate night of poetry. I think about my brain turns into a sort of whirlpool when it's this sort of direct and intimate, and this was incredible, and I thank you both so much for this. We talked about killing kings on No King's Day. We talked about the difficulty of poetry reading as maybe feeling kind of indulgent with the parallel metaphor of a really, really great meal with couscous and asparagus and some lemon drizzle. And I think that sort of, that shield of rage with what's happening now, that there is something to breaking through that with still being able to achieve joy. And I think that this space is something that can balance those two things in a really fruitful way. And I think that these two poets there's a serendipity to the Splice thing that we do here, and this was just perfect. And so thank you, and thank you all for coming out on that nice, hot, wet, slow New Orleans, June, middle of the summer. This was just wonderful. Thank you all, and we'll see you next month.